All right, well, welcome, Dizier. Thank you so much for being here today. To begin the interview, I'd like to just start and ask to learn a little bit more about yourself, sort of, your status as a student here at UNT and sort of what you're doing now, what you hope to do when you graduate.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I am currently a senior studying construction engineering technology as my major and economics as my minor. I started out in the spring of 2018. So I've been here for about 4.5 years. So thankfully I'm on track. In engineering, they say you take like 5 years, but thankfully I'm on track to graduate like within 4 years or so. And I currently am the president of Phi Sigma Pi National Honor Fraternity and the PR of Association for Construction Engineering Technology. So I get pretty involved as much as I like. And also, I'm a student worker on campus.
You're busy. That's so impressive. That's really
Thank
cool.
you.
All right. So, how did you find this internship, and when did it take place?
So I found this internship on the Handshake website. It did require me to apply to the Texas Department of Transportation external website, but the job was posted on Handshake, and I did get this job or internship in 2021, the summer of 2021.
Perfect. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about the internship experience itself. Sort of what was your day-to-day life like? Sort of what were the duties and roles you were assigned?
Yeah. So it was more of a shadowing process. So I would go with the project engineers and project managers to project locations to kind of like look over the project, help them talk to vendors and subcontractors, and kind of do all the day-to-day activities within that project because each intern were assigned to a specific project. There were actually four of us, and there were three groups of two, and I was by myself because I was assigned to a smaller project. So the groups of twos were assigned to larger projects, but we helped them with things like uh, daily reports, requests for information, kind of looking, like I said, looking over the project and making sure everything is running as smoothly as possible. And before we started actually going out in the field, we're in the office doing some training because we had some mandatory training. And we also did some like busy work, like organizing some paperwork as interns do. Yeah, that's basically like a good amount of what we did.
Wonderful. All right. So, next question. Did you have a supervisor, and what kind of role did they play in your professional development during your time as an intern?
Yes, I did have a supervisor, and he was the head of the Denton area. And he kind of made sure that we had everything that we needed for the internship. He always asks, okay, if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me or the project supervisor you're assigned to, and we can get as much as we need to like accommodate you. And he's always, once we need to go to the district office, because I think at least once we did, he was the one that organized it and said, okay, if you need a ride, we can set up a ride for you. And he kind of like was a mentor too, because he made sure that we are learning as much as we can. He did actually ask us questions and quiz us. Hey, you were over at this department at so and so day. What did you learn from it? What can you take away from it? How do you apply that to school? And yeah, he really made sure that we were learning as much as we can.
That's awesome. Yeah, a good supervisor can make all the difference in an experience like that, for sure. So, what were some of the highlights of the role for you, or any
I'm
challenges you
sorry.
may have faced? Did you hear me?
Okay, yes. Sorry, I didn't really understand the question as much, but I get it now. Um, Challenges. Okay, so before I started in May, and there were a few difficulties with like getting our equipment ready before we could actually go out in the field. So like I mentioned before, they had us do like busy work and organize paperwork, and it was it wasn't something new. It was kind of hard to adjust because they had us like calculate some estimates for different projects, and it was I had done estimates and like estimating classes before, but it was kind of new, like seeing it in actual plans and kind of incorporating that. But they were there to teach us, and I was really happy about that, and I get to learn that too. Then another big challenge was I noticed in the department communication was kind of an issue because okay, for at least the project I was in, they had different versions of plans. So the earners had like a hard copy, they had the supervisor, the superintendent had different copies. So it was kind of hard communicating between each person because they all had different copies that when one aspect of the project was updated, it wouldn't be reflected on, let's say, the subcontractor's version. So so it was, like I said, it was with a lot of miscommunication, and it was kind of hard to figure out where everybody's at and if everyone's on the same page with where the project is at. So I saw like a lot of difficulty with that. Then um, from the years before I went in, interns were allowed to drive the state assigned trucks, but because of an unfortunate accident that happened a few years ago, they required that interns shouldn't drive the trucks. So it was pretty difficult trying to decide who should go to where because we would have to drive along with someone. And sometimes they had like specific trainings they had to do that they had to stay in the office and not go to the field. So they had to figure out, okay, who should these interns follow and how are we going to assign them to different projects? So so far that's all I can think of.
Yeah, that does sound like a pretty major barrier to try to figure out how to, yeah, change your plans and learn how to navigate that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, so on the other end of that, what were some of the positive experiences you took away from the experience?
So going into that internship, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do after I graduate. Like, in construction engineering, you can either go through commercial, residential, or heavy civil work. So going through this internship and actually seeing what the heavy civil side of engineering is, in my opinion, it's a lot of fun. There are a lot of like different aspects to it. It's also challenging. It makes you think. It makes you like talk to a lot of people because you have to constantly communicate with people about projects and also updating the projects and any problems that may arise from it. So I'm really happy that I got to experience that and see like, okay, is civil engineering actually something I'd want to do? And I can say that yes, that is a big possibility for me. Then there is a program that I also learned about that the Texas Department of Transportation is doing, an engineering and training program. And it takes you like through the different departments they have. It's I believe a 2-year training program. And it, once you get in, like I mentioned, it takes you through the department, it trains you in every aspect like construction, maintenance, design. There are a few others I can't remember right now, but it takes you through all that and trains you. And by the time you're done with the program, you would get to choose like where you actually want to work permanently. And I really thought that was awesome. And hopefully I'll be able to apply and get into that program.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I think that's the one of the wonderful things about internships is you never know who you're going to meet or what you're going to learn or what experience might come next because you pursued that internship in that path. Not only do you gain a lot of experience in about the field and if that's something you'd like to do after you graduate, but also opportunities like that that you never ever thought about might come up like that. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing about
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, and I also like to ask questions because they might ask you, oh, you need to do this. And I don't say, like they say jump, and I don't say how high, I say, why should I jump? So they took us through the labs and also in the field, and they took us to district, and I asked a lot of questions about a lot of the processes that go through the different departments. And I'm glad from everything I learned. I also wrote down some things that really interest me. Like the material testing process is actually pretty cool. And I got to see like how they tested a lot of concrete, sand, flex-based material. It was really awesome to get to see all that.
That's wonderful. That's really cool. And that's wonderful
Yeah.
advice. I think that asking questions, I think, yes,
Mhm.
never be afraid to ask questions and experiences like that. So
Yeah, trust me, there are no stupid questions. Like if you're wondering something, do not be afraid to ask. Because it might really help you to figure out if you want to go through that specific career choice. Because if you don't ask questions, there's no way you can know.
mhm, absolutely. All right. And you kind of already talked about this, but if you wanted to talk about it a little bit more, how did this internship influence your future career plans?
Yes. So, like I said, I wasn't really sure of where I should go. Actually, I was leaning towards more commercial or heavy civil work, and probably in the what's it called, project management aspects of work. But going into this department and the Texas Department of Transportation, I've seen that I really like more hands-on work and kind of going into the field to kind of communicate with people and get as much information as I can. And I still would like to go through the project management road because it actually deals with a lot of like managing and talking to people, and I like communicating with people. So like I mentioned, it has made me more interested in civil engineering. And like I mentioned, that program that I learned about during the internship, hopefully I'll be able to get into it and start my career from there.
That would be so neat. Please let me know. Please keep me updated on that. I hope
I
that
will.
works out. Please do.
I also, there is an advice for any other people that are listening. There is an exam that you would write. It's called Fundamentals of Engineering. And I think you know about the professional engineering exam and career path you'd go through to get like, to be a professional engineer to practice in the field. But before that, you have to get your Fundamentals of Engineering certification. And a lot of advice I was given was do it while you're still in school. Don't wait till after you graduate. And there are a lot of things that you learn at school that they ask you during the exams that if you do decide to do it after you graduate, you might have forgotten a lot about it. So it would be harder for you to study for that. So it's really good to get that certification. It keeps you above other applicants. And once you have an internship with them and you have that fundamentals of engineering certification, it really sets you high above others. And you're almost guaranteed the job. Hopefully you're guaranteed it. But yeah, right now I am writing it very soon. So hopefully I'll pass.
The exam, you mean?
Yes, it's an exam.
Oh, that is wonderful, wonderful advice. Yeah, my next question, do you have any advice for international students who are maybe interested in pursuing an internship but don't know what that process looks like?
Yes, it can be a bit tedious because there is a job certification called curricular practical training, which is CPT as we call, and you would actually have to apply for it once you get, sorry, I blanked out. Once you get an offer for the job, because you actually need that offer letter to apply for the CPT. So once you do apply, you would have to talk to your advisor and get like a course. It's called like an internship course you would have to take for you to remain in status while you're taking that internship, because you would actually take at least one class to remain in status, because you can't really, because you're an internship, international students, you can't really work outside the US, especially with an internship, outside the university. When it comes to an internship without taking that particular class, at least for CPT. And there's another there's another form you'd have to fill from after you graduate, which is the optional practical training form. But that's completely different. And it's similar, but you don't, at least for that one, you don't have to be enrolled in a class that's within your major. Yes, you'd also have to apply for jobs that are within your major, because it's a lot more difficult to relate jobs that are not in your major to kind of like tell you to, for you to say that, yes, I'm working within my major, if that makes sense. And yeah, so once you get that offer letter, apply immediately, talk to your advisor, and make sure you're keeping the company you applied for up to date on like your documentation, because they would need, from the international office, they would need some documents for you, your advisor, and the department to sign on, or the company to sign on. And yes, so I think that's as much as I can give. It, yeah.
That's a lot of wonderful information for those students. So I think they'll definitely appreciate that. Yeah. Overall, would you recommend internship experiences for undergraduate students? And do you have any additional advice for them, just sort of generally?
Oh, definitely. If you can, apply for as many internships you can, because for international students especially, it's a bit more difficult process because there's kind of some documentation you have to go through, but it's worth it. You learn so much. Some things you never knew you could learn, you see them in the field, and it's even amazing how you can relate things that you've learned in class to the internships you are actually working at. And it's very fulfilling, and it also helps you to figure out where you actually want to go after you graduate, because there are some people that decide, oh, do they want to go home or stay here and work? And it helps you make that decision, because it puts your foot in the door of like what goes on in your particular field of work. And persistence is key. If you don't get it now, do it again. Send emails, ask people, hey, are there particular positions I can work at? Even if you don't get a particular position, ask them, is there anything else open that I can get? And if you don't get it now, like I said, keep trying. And the earlier you start, the better. Because I started applying for internships, I believe, the end of my freshman year towards my sophomore year. And I didn't really get anything until this past summer. So trust me, persistence is key. And as much as you keep trying, you keep yourself out there, and you just put your word out, put your name out, let them know your name. Go to career fairs as much as you can. They're really helpful. Join organizations if you can. Run for leadership positions too. Fill up your resume with those leadership positions because people know this. And they're impressed with on-campus involvement, out of campus. If you can, volunteer too. Even if you're not getting paid, volunteer work does look well on your resume. And yeah, as long as you keep trying your best, keep your foot up, and don't forget to ask questions too, because questions are important. Yeah, you do your best.
God, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for, offering all that wonderful, wonderful advice. I think I love what you said about persistence. I think that's rings very, very true in my experience as well. And I think that's definitely just sort of asking questions, being persistent, and just letting yourself get your name out there, even though it can be scary. But an internship can be a great way to sort of ease into that process a little bit before jumping in, looking for full-time jobs. It sort of helps you into that process in a little bit of it's a lower stakes situation. So, but yeah, thank you so much for all that advice. I guess my last question,
Of course.
is just, was there anything that we didn't discuss during this interview that you were hoping to when it comes to your experience in the internship? And if there's nothing else you want to talk about, that's okay too.
Yeah,
Cover
it's
everything really well.
I will say one thing. Apply like I said, as early as possible. I cannot stress that enough. Because positions get filled pretty fast. And with situations like the pandemic, positions can be limited. So make sure you're doing it as early as possible. If you can, apply for maybe 2 jobs or internships a week, and it stacks up, and hopefully you get something. Yeah, and I think that's everything I have to say.
Thank you so much, Jose, for just your time today and for being so open about your experience. And I know this will really hopefully help a lot of students who are, especially international students, who are looking to someone who's gone before them and can offer some really wonderful advice. And so, yeah, thank you so much for your time.